Now we are in chapter 8 called Surrender to the Divine. He's here! He's here! He's here! Pratap rushed toward me, breaking the silence of the bustling central pathway at the ashram. Breathless, my new and only friend grabbed my hand. Come meet him! Come meet him! I had long since given up waiting for the phantom president to arrive, which would potentially allow me to stay at this ashram, known as Paramarth Niketan, which is the largest ashram in Rishikesh, one of the holiest cities in India, and one of the largest spiritual institutions there too. The man at the front desk of the Green Hotel provided me with all the details I wanted about this magical place, with life-sized statues and disembodied voices. He told me they have more than 1,000 rooms. And I can't even get one, I wondered. Plus a wide range of spiritual, charitable, and humanitarian programs. It's the most famous ashram, he said, clearly impressed and proud to be in such close proximity. So, I figured the people working in the office must have had more important things to do than field questions from a teary-eyed American woman twice a day. They clearly did not want me to stay, but were too polite to tell me. I assumed that to avoid hurting my feelings. They must have simply invented a phantom higher authority who would never arrive. They knew I'd eventually go away and they wouldn't have to insult me by telling me I wasn't welcome. The office staff was simply employing, as I had learned by then, the socially acceptable solution of white lies to avoid upsetting someone. I decided to stop harassing them and turn the focus of my wonder elsewhere. Inside me, movie music was playing non-stop. Not the hit tunes you sing inside for decades, but the wordless music that announces, it's about to happen. You don't know what it is, but instinctively you reach out to hold the hand of the next person, or tighten your jaw. When I heard that voice at Paramarth Niketan, I felt it was there. But with the men in the office thwarting my path, I decided it would probably come from the mountains. So, my husband Jim and I were headed to the mountains the following morning, on a 5 o'clock luxury bus that would, barring breakdowns, landslides, avalanches, road closures, or other seemingly inevitable hurdles, arrive in the sacred town of Badrinath by nightfall. We had planned to leave that day, Monday, September 23rd. It wasn't too long ago. However, after an ecstatic music concert at a local music teacher's home the night before, we sat on the banks of Ganga, the moon hanging low, holding us in her glow. Suddenly, instinctively, I suggested, let's go Tuesday instead of tomorrow. Why? I spoke the words before I even thought them. Mountains have always been my refuge. Every spiritual experience I had prior to coming to India took place melting in the wet earth beneath huge redwood trees, or hiking alone through high-altitude pine forests as my breath merged with the the alpine air. And I felt my existence merge with the mountains. Mountains were my vacation of choice, whether for a day trip for several weeks. Whether for a day trip or for several weeks. So, heading from Rishikesh to the mountains was natural for me. To postpone a departure, though, was unprecedented. Yet, I just said it. Jim agreed easily. He would take another day of yoga and philosophy classes at the nearby center. The ecstatic tears that streamed down my face, now nearly constant prisms through which I saw a world of rainbows, carried away the self-doubt to which I'd grown accustomed as a teenager. The power of whatever had grabbed hold of me, whatever had thrust me into this experience of bliss, was one I trusted. Now, Monday morning, as I walked back from the steps of the Ganga through Parmarth toward the hotel for a quick bathroom break, my new friend, Pratap, saw me from the temple where he sat. A retired professional from Maharashtra, a large state in western India. He spent several months a year at the ashram doing seva, or selfless service. The service given to him was to sit in the temple at the place where people passed after having darshan, a viewing, beholding presence of the deities. As Saraswati describes, a Hindu tradition that refers to seeing and being seen by the divine, typically in the form of deities in temples. Pratap's responsibility was to hand everyone a bag of prasad, blessed food, in this case puffed rice. With thousands of visitors per day, it was no seva for the lazy. Pratap's English was impeccable, and I had discovered him earlier in the week as I roamed through the ashram, pining to stay. I began to visit him daily, sitting on the ground in front of his low desk, on which were piled bags and bags of the holy blessed rice. I listened to him expound on the nature of the universe. How beautiful. I'm going to continue reading. I just have to turn my alarm off on my phone. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I cut out my microphone for a second. Got that back. Back to the story. The universe being revealed with puffed rice. As he handed the prasad to pilgrims, Pratap talked about God. Prayer is like a broom which sweeps out your heart, he told me one day. I'd never heard anyone speak about prayer other than in jokes that typically began with, "So, there was a priest, a rabbi, and a minister." Pratap was not concerned by the tears pouring from my eyes or the seeming incoherence with which I tried to explain my experience. As I stumbled for words, he smiled knowingly. You have seen Ganga Maya, the mother goddess Ganga. You are very blessed." He had, according to Indian tradition, fulfilled his Grihastha Ashram phase of life, the householder stage. He had had a good job, had raised a family, and was now shifting into the Vanaprastha Ashram phase of moving away from the material world and toward a spiritual life. Later, should he follow tradition, he would further shift from Vanaprastha to Sannyas, the stage of full renunciation and dedication only to spiritual practice. Pratap had embraced the concept of life as something for which the highest goal is spiritual awareness and experience, and his conversations emphasized the mundane nature of the world. Pleasures come and go, he told me. You can never hold on to them. Their nature is to be fleeting. The only non-fleeting joy is in divine connection. Pratap knew I was waiting to meet the president. He also knew about the daily, maybe tomorrow answer I got from the office regarding the president's arrival. He didn't know I had given up waiting and was headed to the mountains. Why insult a man who had been so generous with his time and wisdom by telling him that I realized there was no president, that I knew his phantom higher authority had simply been invented so the office staff wouldn't have to tell me I couldn't stay? I had stopped asking, stopped expecting, and stopped waiting for my Indian Godot. I would simply leave. I knew something important was about to happen in my life. I could feel it in my breath, and I could hear it in the wind. I just didn't know where it would come from. So, on this Monday morning, as I walked back to the hotel to go to the bathroom, no longer stopping to inquire after the president, my friend Pratap, a man well into his 70s, came sprinting out of the temple onto the main ashram pathway, shouting, "He's here! He's here!" In those days, the ashram president, Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswati Ji, usually called Pujya Swamiji or Swamiji, met people twice a day for open darshan. Darshan means seeing the divine in Sanskrit, being seen by the divine or divine sight. The word is used for beholding images of God in temples. For example, we are going to the temple for darshan. It can also pertain to sitting in the presence of an enlightened master who sees the divine in each person and encourages us to see ourselves as divine too. Looking deeply through the eyes of an enlightened being, we have the opportunity to see the divine. On another level, darshan refers to any meeting with a saint. I'm having darshan with Pujya Swamiji tomorrow. In those days, Pujya Swamiji gave open darshan from 10:30 in the morning to 11:30 and from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. For someone off the street, as I was, these were the only times it was possible to see him. It was 10:45 when I walked through the ashram. As Pratap tugged me excitedly, he advised, "Be sure to do pranam when you meet him." "Do what?" I asked, suddenly nervous. I had planned only to ask permission to stay, which in itself had seemed pure fantasy, as I was sure he didn't exist. Now, surprisingly, I felt agitated. "You bow." Pranam means you bow very low on the ground. "I'll do whatever you do," I told him. "Just show me, and I'll follow." I didn't know a thing about the president except that he got to decide whether I could stay. Now I was supposed to prostrate myself before him? I guessed he was more than a high-level administrator, quite possibly a religious figure. I was suddenly curious, and still a bit nervous. When we reached the reception area, which was next door to the office where I'd been asking about his arrival, Pratap gently opened a screen door and motioned for me to walk in. The room was large and bare, save for a burnt orange carpet on which 30 or 40 people were sitting. Some were poor, others well-to-do. Some were professionals, others looked like they lived on the street. They all faced the front of the room, where, on a thin, saffron-colored cushion, sat the most beautiful man I have ever seen. Let's pause our reading of Hollywood to Himalayas there for now. So thank you for exploring this. In our next reading, we can explore the description of this most beautiful man, soon to be, perhaps, guru of our dear author, Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, who clearly at the time of writing the book now carries the same spiritual last name. Thank you for listening. Namaste.